Greetings and welcome all to our Fridays at Findlay here. We are glad that you're able to join us today for our speaker. We're going to have quite a time together. Thank you for joining us. Our special guest today will be taking the driver's seat here in just a minute. We are pleased to welcome Indy 500 winner Sam Hornish Jr., who will share with us life lessons from the fast lane of auto racing. UF is grateful for the opportunity to offer this interesting and informative presentation for a Northwest Ohio native, presentation from a Northwest Ohio native who has been a successful driver in the Indy Racing League and the NASCAR X Infinity Series. I would like to take a moment to say thank you to Premier Bank, soon to be Wesco Bank, to be our main sponsors here for the Fridays at Findlay series. We are pleased to have you here every time we do these. Thank you so much. If I could get a round of applause for them, please. Thank you. A little bit of an update for the university. Spring semester is wrapping up. In fact, next weekend will be our commencement ceremony. We are excited that 861 students will be graduating, ranging in age from 18 to 56. So some of you out there, it's not too late. They are completing 19 associate degrees, 453 bachelor's degrees, 284 master's degrees, and 120 doctorates. These graduates come to us from 21 countries and 35 states. They also include 15 veterans or those currently still serving in the military. In addition, 2 of our CCP College Credit Plus students are graduating from high school this month and with an associate's degree in arts and general studies, giving them a jump start in their academic career. Next weekend, we will also be welcoming to campus Mark Brown. Some of you may know Mark Brown, who is an Emmy Award-winning author and illustrator, and he is the creative mind behind Arthur, the PBS children's television show. But before we bring up Sam, I would love to introduce you again to Amber Roberson. Amber is our steady Pray for Fridays at Findlay student. She's been here about 4 times, and we love her, and she's getting ready to graduate, so this might be the last time we see her before she becomes a veterinarian, huh? Come on up.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Amber Robeson, and I'm a pre-vet animal science major with a double minor in chemistry and biology, and it's an honor to be here with you today. For a quick background on myself and my relationship with the University of Findlay, my dad was a UF alum who graduated in 1996. I started my career here my junior year of high school, where I took College Credit Plus courses through the university, which allowed me to complete 58 credit hours of high school, which is roughly 2 years of college before I graduated. Now I am able to graduate a year early, so I'm graduating next Saturday, which is the end of my 3rd year, and I've been accepted to veterinary school, where I will attend Mississippi State University College of Veterinary Medicine to continue to get my doctorate in veterinary medicine to continue to make a difference in the world. On campus, I'm very involved in campus ministries, where I'm the worship band vocalist leader of the Christian Veterinary Mission, and was previously a girls group Bible study leader. I'm involved in DTA, the Agricultural Honor Society, Tri Beta, a Biological Honor Society, Mortarboard National Honor Society, and more. I'm also part of a research group under Dr. Zulu, where we are currently researching HeLa cells and how they're affected by a drug that we made to possibly kill cancer cells. Overall, the University of Findlay has given me opportunities and experiences that I could never imagine being here, and that have helped me become a well-rounded individual. Before we get started, let's take a moment to pause and reflect and invite God's presence. Will you pray with me? Dear God, thank you for bringing us together today and for the chance to hear Sam Hornish, a man whose journey through racing has inspired many. We're grateful for the experiences he's had and the wisdom he's gained both on and off the track. As Sam shares with us, we ask that you open our hearts and minds, help us to learn from his story, not just about racing, but about faith, perseverance, and staying grounded no matter how fast life moves. Bless Sam as he speaks today. Give him the words that will encourage and uplift, and bless each person here. Help us to be reminded that with you, every path has a purpose and every race has a meaning. Thank you for being with us in every season, the highs and the lows, and for giving us role models who show us what it's like to lead with integrity and heart. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Amber. We appreciated those wonderful words. So good morning. I'm Marcia Latta, and I serve as Senior Philanthropy Advisor. And it is really an honor, and I'm excited that we have the chance to hear from Sam Hornish Jr. You know, the series, we hear from people from a variety of walks of life, right? Those of you who have been coming, thanks to our wonderful sponsors, through the years, you name the field, and I think we've had them here. Always, though, people who have achieved at the pinnacle of their field, because the overarching theme is leadership, and one can find excellent leadership in every single field, and there are similarities across. Our speaker today, Sam Hornish Jr., hails from Northwest Ohio. He spent his early years in the Williams, Fulton, Defiance, and Henry counties, real Northwest Ohio, as I say. And he and his wife, Crystal, now reside in the White House area in Lucas County. They have 5 children, and the kids range from, I think, 8 months to 17 years. So this is one very, very busy man. And the kids are involved in all kinds of activities, including just as his parents used to run around and watch him race in go-karts and then automobiles, he now runs around to competitive dance competitions and all kinds of other activities. While I don't know Sam real well, I know his mother very well, and she is an excellent, superb business entrepreneur and very focused. And she is also deeply devoted to her family and to her faith. And so I feel as though I know Sam very well through your mom, who is so very, very proud of you. He also has a niece who is a Weinbrenner grad. And so a few years ago, she was in this building a lot. So now something I found, some of you I'm sure know this, I did not know this until a couple weeks ago as I was doing research for this program. But Jeff Gordon, kind of a big name in racing, right? So Jeff Gordon spent some time here in Findlay years ago, and he was a teenager and actually raced on the Millstream Raceway and lived with a family here for a while. And so I just thought that was an interesting Findlay connection. But why don't you go ahead, Sam, come on up, and while you're coming up, we're going to have a wonderful conversation here, and while you're coming up, I thought this would be a nice treat to rev up your engines for the program. So we're going to watch a video clip of 19 years ago and Sam's victory at the Indy 500.
And we ran second and third most of the whole race. We didn't lead a lot, but we led when we needed to. You know, pick your battles, fight the right ones, and think that you're doing all the right things, and then you come in for a pit stop and it seems like the whole world falls away from underneath you.
Hornish Jr. had a problem. Hornish broke off the fuel hose. A catastrophe in the Team Penske pit.
And we come in, we stop, and the jack man, you know, isn't able to get the, you know, the jack out, and the fuel probe gets stuck a little bit.
I told him to go before the fueler had pulled out. It stuck, and of course we pulled the hose off.
It is 1 and 2, dad and son. Michael and Marco Andretti. Marco goes low, about 4 car lengths behind his dad, Michael Andretti. 3 laps will remain for Michael Andretti. 7.5 miles to realize the dream. Here goes Marco Andretti, side by side. He's going to make the pass in 1 lane. Hey, Dad, watch this.
Dad could have probably been more difficult on me in turn 1, but at that point I knew I had new tires and knew Dad didn't.
Here comes Sam, though. He is closing up on Marco Andretti. You can visually see him closing the gap. Sam Hornish Jr. has battled adversity throughout the day. He's trying to get the lead in Indy.
I've never seen a start to what he did with used tires, and all of the people that he had to deal with there in those closing laps was an amazing finish.
And I pulled out to pass him, and I wasn't really going to try to pass him, but I thought, man, I got such a good run on him, I might as well go for it now.
Hornish all over Marco Andretti, almost goes into the pit lane. Marco slams the door, holds the lead by 5 car lengths.
Because I knew he wasn't going to have enough at the end of turn 3, so I baited him to the inside. I slowly moved to the inside so he didn't go around the outside or anything like that. And once he was there, you know, I was going to close the door because I said, you know, if I could do it now, I could win the race.
19-year-old Marco Andretti, now less than 2 miles away from winning the 90th Indianapolis 500.
And going through 1 and 2, I'm like, I might still have a chance at this. And going through 3 and 4, I think I'm going to get him. And coming off of 4, I'm like, this is, yeah, all right. As long as, you know, I'm going below him, you know, outside of him, over top of him, you know, I'm not lifting from here on out.
I'm doing all I can do. If I move to the inside a little bit sooner, he has so much momentum, he's going to go around the outside. If you ask him, he'll tell you the same thing, and he'll also tell you he's going to drive over the back of me. He ain't lifting.
And Sam Hornish Jr. right on the tail of Marco Andretti. Can a teenager win in Indianapolis? Sam Hornish Jr. makes the pass, he'll win it. Sam Hornish Jr. goes to the inside of Marco Andretti and wins it in the final 100 yards. Sam Hornish Jr. has won the 90th Indianapolis 500 in an incredible finish.
There's no way I was going to put a blatant block on him because not one of us wants to win this race upside down.
What I appreciated the most is his control of his emotions, not to do something stupid. He could have created a disaster there at that point because Sam was not going to back off.
I waited for him to make the first move, and then I went harder, you know, with whatever direction that he went. In my mind, I figured that, you know, he's looking in the mirror going, where'd he go? And then I'm beside him. It was just a, you know, a great way to be able to win that.
At Indy, you're either first or it's nothing. That's why you saw me bummed after my rookie race.
I was happy to be there, and I couldn't ask for anything more. I decided the next day that I didn't want to be a race car driver anymore. I could have quit and been more than happy with everything that had gone on in my racing career and what I had accomplished.
That's a great clip.
Yeah, I don't really always like watching that because I feel like it's going to be the time where I don't get there. Like, it's like, oh no, I didn't make it that time.
So, Sam, let's start from the beginning. How did you get interested in racing, auto racing?
For a long time, I would have told you that it was my dad's fault, and maybe even before that, my grandfather. So when my dad was a kid, one of the things that he looked forward to is when he was 10 years old, that's when he could go to the Indianapolis 500. My grandpa had a rule that you had to be at least 10 to be able to go to the 500. And so my dad looked forward to that. That was something that him and his dad did together. My grandfather passed away at the age of 51. My dad was 24 or 25 at the time. So about the time that I was turning 10, 11 years old, my dad was reaching the age of 50, so I feel like, you know, that some of that finality or what he thought maybe his life was going to be like started creeping, so he decided that he needed to spend some father-son time with me. And for my 11th birthday, they bought me my first racing go-kart. We knew almost nothing about it, racing in general, like we'd been to races, but hadn't partaken in it, and started off at a little track just south of Lima called Cridersville Motor Speedway. He convinced my mom that it would be a few weekends throughout the summer. I finished 5th in my first race out of 25 karts. Third, I had 2 seconds, and I think I won 3 or 4 races straight. And those were all in consecutive weeks. And then it pretty soon turned into about 38 weekends throughout the year, and him and I traveling all over the United States, and even going as far away as Italy and France to run in the Karting World Championships. So I don't know if he was honest with my mom about what it was going to be, or I just was enough better at it than what he thought it was going to be, that he just kind of continued to bait me a little bit further out there, and it worked out well. I was frustrated with my dad most of my childhood, because every time I could win at anything, he would move me up to the next level, and I was always the one getting the sand kicked in my face by the big bully. He never let me be the bully. But what it did was it got me to the IndyCar series at a pretty young age, and obviously getting to run my first Indy 500 when I was 20 years old. So it worked out very well, but it was always a constant learning process, which in a lot of ways has set me up for the rest of my life. And while I didn't go to college, my life has been a long learning event, which everybody's is. It's just some people realize it and others don't. They keep having to learn the same lesson over and over again.
So as a kid, who was your favorite driver and why?
When I was a kid, Danny Sullivan was one of my favorite drivers, Al Unser Jr., Rick Mears. For a long time, I told you, I don't really know why. I keep picking those guys, and then I realize that they all drive for Roger Penske. So maybe Roger was just my favorite team owner, and I was fans of the guys that drove for him.
So speaking of Roger Penske, let's talk about that. Woody Hayes used to always say, "You win with people." And, I watch that, and I see when there's the accident, right? And you've got people right around you. You see the interview with Roger Penske. How many people are part of the team? Who decides? Is that you? And I don't know when you became Team Penske, but how does that all happen about the team? How many people are involved? Who makes the decision? All of that.
The pit crew, there's 6 guys that go over the wall in IndyCar, a changer for each tire, a jack man, and a fuel man. But that is all taken care of, and at the time, the guy that would have been in charge of that would be Tim Cindric, was the president of the IndyCar portion of Penske Racing, or Team Penske. Roger has a specific thing. He doesn't do it anymore. He feels like he doesn't. But he called the races. So there was a data acquisition guy. There was 2 engineers that were on the stand, and there was Roger, and Roger was the race strategist. So one of the things that Roger did different than a lot of the other teams, I had the pleasure of working this way, but you heard him say, he goes, "I told him to go too soon." And Roger was anticipating when he would see the fueler start to pull out. Like his arms would go from being very taut, push forward, and as soon as his arms would start to relax, Roger would start to tell me to go, because he figured that the time change, that would be an advantage, as opposed to a lot of the other teams, when the car starts to drop, then the driver puts it in gear and starts to go. So, it's split seconds, but it's really what makes the difference a lot of times in winning or losing races. When I first got to Indy cars, I thought, I've never ran races that are this long, but I'll have a chance to catch my breath under yellow or while we're doing the pit stops. And really, those are some of the most intense times, because so much can be gained or lost based upon what you do with the pits. So there's a lot of things with racing in general where the driver is kind of like the quarterback. Tom Brady got a lot more attention than the offensive line guys did, but without the offensive line, Tom Brady can't be Tom Brady. So there's so many things that the team is involved in, and the driver gets the most of the glory, but they also get the kick in the pants when it doesn't go well. So.
Yeah. Great. And how'd you connect up with Roger Penske? How'd that happen?
Well, when I was 12 years old, I had a dream that my parents owned a trucking company when I was growing up, and part of my payment for racing was I worked after school at the trucking company. I started out washing trucks, and then when I turned 15, I got to move over to the fab shop, and we built a lot of our own trailers there to be able to do the specialized stuff that our company did. And I had this dream when I was probably 14 or 15 that I was working in the shop, and Roger pulls up in this big, elaborate motorhome, and him and Rick Mears are, trying to get me to come to work for him. And I remember waking up, I'm like, yeah, right, like that'll ever happen. And it didn't at all happen that way, but when I was 22, I was on the verge of winning my second IndyCar championship, competing against Penske Racing, Team Penske, and Roger decided that if I can't beat him, I'll hire him. So I got the opportunity to go to work for Roger in 2004, and with the sole purpose of winning the Indianapolis 500. One of the things that I didn't really realize when I was signing up for that is Roger had created such a culture within Team Penske, and being at Team Penske was the pinnacle. Of the programs, it's like I had the choice to go to Harvard, or I have the choice to go to I don't know some no-name college that you've never heard of. Everybody wants to go to Harvard if they have the opportunity to. But on the NASCAR side of it, what it looked like is most of the guys that came to work at Penske Racing were trying to get to a place like Joe Gibbs Racing or Hendrick Motorsports or another team, and I always kind of looked at that was a weird thing because I always wanted to go to work for Roger. So part of the reason why I went to NASCAR, why Roger wanted me to go to NASCAR, was the ability to change the culture from within on what it was like. And Team Penske today, when I went to work in the NASCAR side, where a lot of people would say, Sam, you won 3 IndyCar Series championships and an Indy 500 in basically 8 seasons total, which is a pretty good thing. But the first year I ran a partial schedule, and the last year I ran almost 30 other events that season that were outside of what the IndyCar was. 2 NASCAR Cup Series events. I also ran the IROC International Race of Champions Series. I ran the 24 Hours of Daytona and a couple other, handful of Xfinity things. So out of the 6 seasons that I focused solely on the IndyCar Series, we won 3 championships in the 500. And if you look at my NASCAR stats, everybody would go, that was a failure. But what I was hired to do when I went to the NASCAR side was to help change that culture. And when I went over there was no Daytona 500 wins, no championships. So since that point in time, Roger's won 5 Cup Series championships in the last 18 seasons, multiple Daytona 500s, and now they are this is a place that I go to, and it is the pinnacle of not only Indy cars, but it's also of the stock car world too. So you don't get a bunch of guys that are just looking to trade up and get to another organization, which is one of the things that I'm most proud of, because when somebody hires you because of a talent that you were given, it's one thing. When somebody puts you into position because of your integrity and your ethics, that's a different one. So one, I don't have any control over, and one, I have the choice on whether I have integrity or not. I have the choice on whether I make good ethical decisions, whether I put other people first, whether I do the right thing regardless of how my day happens to be going. So that's most people will never look at that as this is a highlight of Sam Hornish's career, but that's one of the things when I see those guys race on Sunday in the Cup Series and they win races, and that team is regarded as one, that's something that I feel like I had a part in, regardless of the size of it or whether I get recognition for it.
It's great insight. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. No matter what our fields are, and we have people in this room with a whole variety of fields, when it's a big day that you are preparing for, we've got a few student athletes here in the room and a couple of coaches, we've got professors here, we have local business leaders. We all have to think how we're going to approach that big day. How did you psychologically prepare for a race?
Well, psychologically preparing for a race is one thing. Preparing for the Indy 500 is another whole animal. Basically, you lived and died around the Indianapolis 500 if you were in the IndyCar series, and all days led up to the Indy 500. So when people say, Sam, you might have been the first guy that could have won 5 of them. Yeah, and I might not have ever won another one, but what the Indianapolis 500 hinges around is you think all year for it. At the end of 2005, I think I weighed 183 pounds. I was a 2-time champion already. I'd won 14 or 15 races in the IndyCar series at that time. It was highly decorated, and I was like, I needed to make a change in the things that I'm doing, because without winning the Indy 500, this is not. It's never going to be a successful career. When I first got in the IndyCar series, a lot of people said, well, I can't believe, A, that he's here, and B, he won't last. And then I won my first race, and it was kind of like, it was always like the ball got moved down the field. And the part that you don't really understand as a young kid is that when the media portrays something, they can't all be on your side because there's no story then. So they have to find ways to kind of pick things apart that you haven't done yet. And you have to relish that because, at least they're talking about you. So from the basically Thanksgiving to the first day of March, I went from 183 pounds down to 154 pounds. I worked out 4 hours a day minimum throughout that time. So it wasn't just that I lost fat, but I gained a lot of muscle too. And I was just physically fit, and everything was in preparation to be able to win Indy. We went there in 06, and it was the food, it was the amount of training that I did, it was the amount of sleep that I got. Everything it was focused towards that. Even to the point of you kind of measure how many hands that you shake on race day, because everybody of the 250,000 people want to shake your hand. And you just have to figure out what are the things that are going to keep me focused on the race. And that race in particular, it's such a long one that you just had to make sure that you were there at the end. But preparing for any race requires quite a bit of nutritional stuff. I'm not in racing shape anymore. I just have given up on that passion. But I could always get back there if I wanted to.
So you made the comment about your Indy series wins. You made the switch to NASCAR. NASCAR, a little bit bumpier from a stats standpoint, et cetera. Talk with us psychologically about that. I mean, you shared, that was very interesting insight in terms of part of why Roger wanted you to go there and why you made that switch. But you had come off where you were at, the absolute pinnacle, and then you moved into NASCAR, and you had some wins, you had some losses. And talk with us about how that felt and how you mentally handled all of that.
Mentally, I handled it fairly poorly. It was one of the if I were to look at seasons of my life, it's one of the most disappointing and probably regretful seasons of my life, because I was at that time married for approximately 3 to 4 years. Our oldest daughter was either on her way or she was under the age of 18 months in that season. I was focused on a lot of things, and racing probably was, fourth in line. It's what I spent the majority of my time doing, but it didn't have all the passion for it that I should have. And the reason that I probably feel like I didn't part of why I didn't succeed at it the way that I needed to is because I always felt like, if it doesn't work out, I'll just go back to IndyCar. And then what I found out over the course of the time was I'm not going back over there. I've achieved everything that I wanted to do and more, way more than I could have ever expected. And now this gauntlet has been laid down. But I've always also kind of peed away 3 years of probably the prime time that I had to really make it. So after that, everything was a struggle to try to get to the point of learning what I needed to do to be able to win races. And the problem then is once I learned what I needed to do, how I needed to drive the car to be able to win those races, everybody had kind of a tarnished opinion of who I was. So it was a lot of peeling the scales back off of that and getting the opportunities, which if everything had worked perfectly and I'd have put 100% effort in and I'd have focused everything and laid it all on the line for that first 3 years in the Cup Series driving for Roger Penske, I might still be driving for Roger in the Cup Series. Who knows, it might have turned out just as bad or worse than what it did. But what it taught me was my fortitude to keep going when things don't go well. Really, if I'd have stayed in IndyCars and things would have continued to go that well, I wouldn't be sitting here today. Nobody would be able to live with me. Because you go out and you win 1 out of 5 races. You just look at King Sam, and that just wouldn't have been good for anybody. So without a doubt, God had his hand in all of it, but I did my best to screw up a fair bit of it. Regardless of what it looks like, I made things difficult on my wife. It took me a long time to figure out how to love my family, my daughters properly. So everything has really been a springboard for where we're at now. And not to jump too far ahead, but I will tell you that it did turn out the way that it needed to. But it wasn't always easy. It was there was a lot of nights laying in bed figuring out why I was banging my head against the same wall.
So let's use this as a transition then into, I wanted to ask, while you were going through challenging times, and yes, you had a wife and at least 1 child by that point, maybe 2, how did Crystal manage this with you, and how did you then ultimately make the decision, you know what, it's time for me to wrap that part of my life and move into the next chapter?
Yeah, so some days it was not handled very well. The biggest thing that I would say that, I chuckle because, they'd say a lot of people, a lot of guys marry their mom, for whatever reason, they find some woman that's kind of, I ended up with, if I were going to split personalities, I ended up with my dad. My wife is a good encourager and a great delegator. So a lot of times she didn't say anything. She just let me allow myself to get in enough of a painful situation that she could encourage me on my way out of it, which I have to be thankful for because that's what I needed. I'm a task-oriented person. I don't like to make lists. I like to go do things. And sometimes even if I have to do it wrong the first time, all I did was figure out how to maybe do it better. I don't like making architectural drawings when I build stuff because even if I build it better than what the drawing is, somebody will go, it doesn't look like the drawing. So I just don't make the drawing. So it was just a lot of different things. Drove for Roger Penske for the first portion of my stock car career in the Cup Series at the highest level at the most competitive time in all of NASCAR history. If any of you ever have Sirius XM, you listen to the NASCAR channel, you'll have people call in and they want to talk about the good old days back when number 3 was on the track. I listened to the 1988 Food City 500 from Bristol. Dale Earnhardt won that race and Bill Elliott finished second, and they were 2 laps ahead of the third place car. Sterling Marlin finished 12th, and he was 28 laps down. It is not a competitive, it was not competitive at that point in time. there was days that were it was competitive, but the good old days in everybody's eyes are generally not what we think that they are. In 2009, we went to the Las Vegas Motor Speedway. There was 56 cars that showed up for a 43-car race, and from the guy that won the pole to the guy that went home not making the race was 0.2 of a second. In 2019, they had 36 cars show up for a 40-car field, so there was nobody that went home. There was 4 empty spots, and it was 2 seconds from the first place to the 36th place car. So it was a very, very competitive time, and it was very difficult, and it's everything that it should have been. I got demoted back down to the Xfinity Series, where I then won my first race in 2011, went back full-time in the Xfinity Series in 2012, finished 4th in the championship, lost the championship by 3 points. Basically, Clint Boyer said NASCAR screwed you, and Clint and I never got along, so if he said that, he really meant it. So finished third or second that year, and promptly one of my jobs on the NASCAR side was to bring new sponsors in, get them interested in the sport. All my sponsors then were moved up to the Cup side with Brad Keselowski because Miller Lite was going from a 38 race season down to an 18 race. So basically they took all my sponsors and put them on Brad's car. And I was at a junction where Roger had an opportunity to put me in the Wood Brothers 21 car, or I had an opportunity to run the Monster Energy car partial schedule in the Xfinity Series for Joe Gibbs Racing. And everybody told me this is a done deal, but as we continued to kind of move things around, it was the end of the season, it was Thanksgiving, it was the first week of December, all the way to December 23rd. And I'm like, if I don't have a contract for Roger's deal with the Wood Brothers by Christmas Eve, I'm signing the one for Joe Gibbs. And I told my manager that, and he said, just wait. And so I ended up signing the deal with Joe Gibbs, and I promptly made Roger very, very upset with me. He said, I told you I had that done. I said, well, I mean, we're to the end of the season. Nobody does anything on the 24th of December through January 1st in the NASCAR world. Like, once we get through that, it's all about Daytona. So I'll take your word for it, Roger, that it was going to happen, but it wasn't happening. Like, it just didn't. And he was not mad, and that began a process where I went and ran for Joe Gibbs and got the opportunity to win a couple races for them. And that catapulted me back to being in the Cup Series with Richard Petty in the 9 car in 2015. And that was like, we didn't have one new car all year. It was as bare bones as you could, and basically what they were trying to do is get the car number through the year until NASCAR's charter system started so that they would be able to go into that. But it was, how do we do it as cheaply as we possibly can? And they had no point of or intention of running me more than a year. So it was very frustrating from about the 5th race in for the next 33 races, because I saw the writing on the wall. I was posed one thing, and then what I saw was completely different. So I went back to, but the most important thing that happened in 2015, the Martinsville race in the fall, I had started doing this Bible study with these guys in 2013. And it was just, we'd pull up a Bible verse. You look at it at some point in time during the week, which was the 10 minutes right before we met together for Bible study. And then we talk about it. And I was like, man, I might not be as biblically illiterate as, even though I can't say it, as illiterate as I thought. I might actually be able to pick something. And it was like these small changes were starting to happen. So anyways, we're at Martinsville, and the guy that was running the Bible study comes in, and he's all excited. He's like, I got this curriculum that I want to do next year. It's called Every Man a Warrior, and it's great. And I'm like, whatever, like that sounds stupid. I didn't say that. That's what I felt. And I walked out of the motorhome, and Martinsville is only a half-mile track, so the driver motorhome lot is outside the track. And I was walking in to start my day, and I kept feeling like, Nick is a good dude. Nick cares for you. He cares for your family. He's also the chaplain for the NASCAR Cup Series. And I thought, he doesn't say, I'm telling you this, that I thought this, but the Holy Spirit is whispering in my ear, Sam, he doesn't deserve that. You know, that conversation that we're having is not me having a conversation with my conscience. It's the Lord saving me from myself. And so I sent him a text. I'm like, hey, man, I'm sorry for raining on your parade. Every Man a Warrior sounds great. I'm just not going to be here next year, so that's why I wasn't that excited about it. And he goes, when I picked these books up, I had you in mind. And he goes, if you want to call in and we'll go over them on Monday mornings for, you know, whatever it takes to do it, I'd be glad to do that with you. And I'm like, well, I really don't have a choice now. So at the beginning of the season in 2016, they basically worked the Every Man a Warrior, where they would meet, you know, once a week at the track and go over, you know, what they'd learned. And it's not a Bible study, even though it says Bible study on it. I'm not a paid endorsement. I know what it did for me in my life. It's a 3-book series, Every Man a Warrior. That's discipleship training. And the first book teaches you about your love relationship with God, how to do that, how to do all the things that your pastor will tell you to do when you listen to him, how to read the Bible, how to memorize and meditate on Scripture, how to pray, you know, how to find God's purpose. The second book is marriage and family, so relating biblically with your wife and your children. And the third book is about money, moral purity, and your own specific calling in life. So I went through those books with Nick about 10 minutes after I really learned how to start praying. Jesus' model of prayer, which we call it the WAR method of prayer, which is worship, admit, request. In the Lord's Prayer, he basically goes through that. Even though Jesus didn't have anything to admit, he gives us the opportunity to. When he says, forgive us our debts as we've forgiven our debtors. And I start learning how to pray, and I feel like God's calling me to move back to Northwest Ohio. And I'm like, man, you're going to have to work that out with Crystal, because we traveled so much in our early 20s, throughout our 20s, really, that, you know, we didn't have a good friend base. We had a lot of people that were friends, but, you know, we didn't have close friends because you're gone 38 weekends a year. It's just, you know, what you see being out on the road. You have friends that are at home. You have friends that are at the racetrack. But those really, you know, deep friendships kind of lack in a lot of ways. And so I'm praying, you know, God, you're going to work it out with her. We're living in North Carolina. Beautiful weather, you know. We're on the lake there. We get the best of both worlds because we spend August through the beginning of June in North Carolina, and then we spend July and you know, the best part of the year in Ohio. So we're basically snowbirds at that point in time when the kids are out of school. Like, we get to spend a lot of time up here and traveling around. We had good friends down there, the school that our kids were in. We loved the school. We were able to participate a lot in that. And, yeah, so I'm praying that God kind of works it out with her. And one night we were laying in bed watching TV, and she pauses it, and she goes, what do you think about moving back to Ohio? And I'm like, well, I've been thinking about it a lot lately. And she goes, I think it's time. You know, our parents aren't getting younger. So, you know, she didn't even know why she was saying what she was saying, I don't think. I think God had just pricked her heart to be able to do that. So that was the second weekend of May. I was running a partial series for Richard Childress in the Xfinity series. And I thought, well, I can do this from Ohio, too. I don't need to be in North Carolina specifically. And lo and behold, by June 5th, which was our anniversary, we had the trailer loaded up and we were moving back to Ohio. And we pulled out of the driveway, and I'm bawling. And she's like, it's just a house. I'm like, I don't care at all about the house. I'm like, this is my career. She goes, you'll still be able to. I'm like, mark my words. What's going to happen here is I'll get some calls, and they'll go, hey, we need you to fill in for this, or we want you to do this. And I'll go, I can be there tomorrow. You can't come today? Nope, I'm in Ohio. And then you drop down the list. Because a lot of times when the haulers need to leave, like those things that happen when they have to make a change, they play it out as long as they can on Tuesday until on Wednesday when the haulers have to leave, then they will make the decision. So we drove home. I backed the truck and trailer into the driveway. I get out of the truck, my phone's ringing, I pick it up, it's Joe Gibbs Racing. They're like, hey, one of our drivers is sick, can you come and drive for us this weekend in Iowa? And I'm like, yeah, I can, I'm in Ohio. And they're like, well, we got all your seat measurements from 2 years ago, so it doesn't matter. Like, if you feel like that's gonna be fine, we'll just put that in there. And so promptly got home, and then on Thursday I flew to Iowa and got to race that weekend. It was Father's Day weekend. I won that day. It was the first race that my mom, my dad, and my wife and all 3 of our kids were at the track that I had won. So most of the races I won throughout IndyCar, it was me and my wife or me and my parents. And then most of the races I won in the Xfinity Series up until that point was just me there by myself. And racing had gone from something that was a family-oriented thing to then being, when I'm there by myself, it's a job. So that was the highlight of that. Okay, you should go see it all worked out. And then promptly after that, all the things that I said were going to happen happened. And then at the end of 2, so we moved back in June of 16. The last professional race that I ran was at the end of 2017. I did get to run for Roger in that race. We were running for the Xfinity Series Championship, for the Owners Championship. I finished second. We lost the brakes halfway through the race, but still managed to finish second. And we won the Owners Championship. So the last memory I have from being a driver at a racetrack where I was the driver, I got to hold the championship trophy and finish second. So when a lot of people go, do you have the itch to go race? Yes, I do, but I don't feel like there's any way that I can top that, as far as there's a lot of guys that their careers are ended with broken feet or a broken back or running 42nd. So it all worked out the way that it needed to be, and I was promptly put into this new part of life for me, which was walking other men through Every Man a Warrior. So end of 2016, I finished up Every Man a Warrior. Took 6 months off from that. I had a friend of mine that was, hey man, you're changing. I noticed some good things going on in your life. I'm like, this is how it's going. He goes, I'd like to talk to my pastor about that. So he talked to his pastor. He calls me. He's like, hey, my pastor wants you to bring that to our church. And I said, okay. So I go and I meet with these guys. And I'm like, they had 10 guys that wanted to go through it. I said, when do you guys want to meet? And they're like, 5 a.m. on Friday morning. And I am not a morning person. I'm like, so when they were telling me some of you guys that signed up, they know you're not morning people, so we thank you for being here today. And I said, what else do you have? And they said, well, we can meet at 5 p.m. on Sunday. I said, 5 a.m. on Friday it is, because my wife and kids are not going to miss me at 5 a.m. on Friday morning. So we got 3/4 of the way through that, and one of the guys goes, man, I'm so glad that you wanted to bring this here. I said, no, you wanted me to bring this here. He goes, no, you wanted to bring it. I said, well, we both got lied to, but it was a good thing. So they've had over 400 of the men in their church that have gone through it. And the platform that God gave me was, if he would have made me a pastor, I probably wouldn't have studied hard enough to be able to do what I needed to do. But B is, a lot of pastors are excited to see me because it's going to get their men to start doing stuff. And so it's kind of like a bait and switch. I'm like, hey, come and see Sam. People go, hey, we're going to get to go hang out with Sam. And then all Sam wants to talk about is, how they're growing in their walk. And so some of them stay, some of them go, but I get the opportunity to go throughout a lot of different churches. It opens a lot of doors, and I've got to see some men profoundly change their life, which gives me purpose. And when people ask me, what are you doing to stay busy? I would tell you that the rate that I'm going right now, I have absolutely no time to drive a race car. So I don't know how I ever did have the time, but it was because I had different priorities and different things right at the forefront of what I had to do. So it's been really interesting for me to see how God continues to change things, and how that walk through IndyCar, NASCAR, and to where we are right now, they all had seasons of purpose, and I don't know what the next season is going to be, but right now it happens to be a lot of college tours and still changing diapers. So not a thing that a lot of people get to go through, but when our oldest son, who is 11, went to school, my wife said, you know what, I'd really like to have another kid. I'm like, I told you I don't want to have any kids after I turn 40, because I'm thinking about my dad, how old he is now, how much I still want to talk to him and stuff like that, and just it's just a different season. So I drug my feet for a little bit, and then one of the guys that I led through, his wife and him had a child, and he was 59. And I'm not suggesting that for anybody, but I was like, I don't have a leg to stand on in this being too old battle, because my kid will graduate before he's starting, again. So then I just to add fuel to the fire, I said, well, I think that if we're going to have one, we should really have two, because, we don't want it to seem like a mistake, And she goes, yep. I'm like, dude, you are so dumb. Like, and then it took about a year and a half. We got pregnant pretty quickly with our second two kids, and then it took a while. And the kids had been begging for a dog, and I just said, honey, I don't think that this kid thing is going to happen, so I think we should get him the dog. 2 days later, she's pregnant. So I'm like, I don't know if God cares about kids having dogs, but it's really funny how He works things out sometimes. So, and then the second of the, so we had Jensen, who's going to be 3 next month, and then Levi is our youngest. I think we looked at each other, and he was conceived. So it just happened so quickly. So. A lot of different things are going on right now, but I told her, I said, what a blessing it is. I said, from our oldest to our youngest, if he happens to move out when he's 18, we'll have kids in the house for 34 years of our life. So I still have to make it that far, but we're having a lot of fun with it, and it's really neat to see kids at different ages, and especially the older kids, having a lot of fun with 2 little brothers, and I think that hopefully that will make all the older kids make better decisions as they are looking for spouses, and how challenging it is to have little ones.
So Sam, we could go on for hours, but I have promised you, because I know you have a place you need to be at a specific time, I always open this up for some questions. So I'm sure there are many. We probably will only have time for a few, but Doreen has the microphone, and she'll move real quickly around with the questions. So who has a question? Okay. One right, yeah, a couple here, one over here.
Thank you. Sam Chuck Bills with High Logistics. You mentioned Cridersville. We're involved in racing. We started in go-karts and got into sprints and a little bit of Xfinity now. But did you ever get into the water at Cridersville?
No, okay. I didn't. But so my oldest son is 11, and he's been bugging me for the last year about going racing. And a friend of mine that also grew up in the Lima area is now down in Cincinnati, and he's running a motorsports park down there. And we were talking because both of our first races were at Cridersville. And so I took my son down there 2 weeks ago to basically do his first test. He's like, what do you expect? I'm like, all I can tell you is this kid is not like me. And he goes, what is that supposed to mean? I said, I'll tell him to go out there and run 50%, and each time you go out, push it a little bit harder. I said, I went down in there and went 100% into turn 1 the first time just to see what happened. That's, learn from your lessons, Sam, and don't work your way up to it. So different learning thing, but I do remember my first race down there, and it just came to me while I was running. They had tires right on the inside of the track where the berm was, and in my first race, I was running like 5th or 6th at the time, and the kid in front of me spun, and I just turned real hard, and the back end came around, and I was heading towards the berm in one of those tires, and I hit the berm just right that I skipped over top of the tire. Like, you couldn't do it again if you wanted to, like, just would not be. I'm like, and that's kind of a symbol of how good God has been to me in a lot of ways, is that, I should have either hit the tire, spun out, been stuck on top of the tire, or a million other things could have happened. And yet it just kind of worked out. So I didn't end up in any water, and thankfully in most of my careers, my career as a whole, the most I've ever got hurt was my feelings, and I broke my foot. So been pretty good to me all in all. And even a couple races that people go, gee, 2003, you almost won 3 championships in a row. The last race you were leading and the engine blew up with 5 laps to go. I was like, yeah, and 2 laps to go, one of the cars went into the catch fence and broke both the guy's feet, legs, and he has a hard time walking now because of it. So I'm like, I was right where I needed to be in pit lane. So who knows how that would have been.
I appreciate your comments on what your mission was for Penske when you started out there.
Thank
for me,
you.
I think that means more than the actual winning the race.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chuck. Yes. Over
Hey, good
here.
morning, Sam. First of all, a quick comment, then a question. My wife and I have been huge Hornish fans since the beginning
Thank you.
in IndyCar. And I want to say, despite all the championships, despite all the wins and all that kind of stuff, you're a bigger, better man today for what you're doing now, and that's
Thank you.
That's very noticeable, and we appreciate that. Now, my question: way back, your very first season in IndyCar, the urban legend was that people were going door to door in Defiance and elsewhere, trying to collect money, donations to buy, to pay for the tire bill for Indy. I'm interested in, is that really true? And maybe even in a broader sense, what was the community outreach and how did they support you in those early years?
That's a phenomenal question. So not entirely didn't go down that way. So in 1999, I was running a series called the Toyota Atlantic Series. We finished 7th in the overall points. I was Rookie of the Year, and I won a race, which I was the only rookie to win a race, so that was really good. And I thought, next year we're going to come back. This is that whole big fish in a small pond thing, where we'll come back next year. Maybe I'll run for the championship. Well, the team owner, basically, the sponsorship that we had was for $400,000 between a lot of the people that worked with my parents, how my parents could help me, and other community area sponsors that we'd picked up along the way. Well, the series, or what the team owner wanted, was going from $400,000 to $1.6 million. So, a 400% increase. So we knew we couldn't do that, and through a lot of doors that opened, we found out that there was this team called PDM, Peterson, Dialovich, and I don't and cannot remember what the M was because that was his silent partner, so he will remain an M. And their moniker, though, what other people called them, was Poor Dumb Mechanics. And what that gave me the opportunity to do was to do the sponsorship money that we basically just moved over there, was to be able to run the first 4 races of the season, to do my IndyCar licensing test and my Indianapolis 500 licensing test, so we could do that with them. It basically, I don't know if you want to call it greed or that shift in strategy of what the Toyota Atlantic guy wanted to do, basically propelled me into the IndyCar series. So we had enough money to do those 4 races, and that was it. So I spun out the first race, finished 20th the next race. We finished 3rd in Las Vegas, which we had a company want to give us a new car because we'd finished 3rd with a year-old car. And at that time, the cars were updated basically every 3 seasons, but 99 to 2000 was when it was an update, so we were actually running a 3-year-old car. So we had a new car to go to Indianapolis with, but we qualified with no sponsor on the side pods of the car. So when we got to Indy, after we qualified, we got Uniden sponsored us. They gave us $250,000 for their sponsorship, worth of cordless Harley-Davidson fuel tank phones. So we didn't get $250,000. We got the equivalent in these phones, a cordless phone. So they gave it to the team because we're not the owner. So the team, I bought them from the team for $17 a piece, which was what they wanted to be able to go to 2 more races. So when you're a kid, and again, like, this is more of my parents and their entrepreneurial spirit than what mine is. 2,500 phones, just buy them from them. We'll sell them. We'll mark them up. But like, the first thing that you have to learn in business is somebody's going to give you something for free. It's because they couldn't sell it. So 2,500 doesn't seem like much until you have 2 semi-trailers pull up of these phones. So there's where the door-to-door thing goes. So we had drivers, most of our work was for General Motors, but we also did stuff with Chrysler and Ford. So we had drivers take the phones and they put them in the company stores so people could buy these phones. I sold 1,700 of those phones to John Menard, and he put them in his Menard store at a loss. I sold those ones at a loss, figuring that we could make it up. And then the last 500, because it was for the Indy 500, we did help me get to 2 more races, so those were sold at 100. So I ended up not making any money about it, but a lot of my parents' drivers, a lot of people in the community, different organizations, the Optimist Club, the Rotary, they bought phones and basically sold them. And I actually, last year, had a guy bring me the phone and re-sign it, 24 years after the fact. So it's kind of an interesting story of it's a community aspect. And even my career, a lot of people go, how did you prepare for the next season of your life? And I told them my career was over before it began so many times that I never thought that it would last forever. In 2000, that partial schedule that we did my first year in IndyCars, we had missed the race at Atlanta because we didn't have the money to go. It was a Wednesday night. I got off of work for working with my parents. I went over to my girlfriend's parents' house, my wife now, and I'm sitting there trying to figure out what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. Because racing had been basically everything at that point in time. I got a call, and they said, hey, we came up with some money to go to Kentucky. We got this new hotel company called AmeriSuites, and basically they're going to give us hotel rooms for free, so that gives us enough money that we can make that race where we don't have to pay for the hotel rooms. We led 38 laps. We were running third with 2 laps to go and ran out of fuel and ended up 9th. And I thought, what a way to end your career. And I got out of the car and I'd been pushing the gas pedal down so hard my foot was asleep, because even after it ran out of gas, I just kept my foot on it for the next 1.5 miles while I coasted around and finished under yellow, and then basically came down the pit road backwards because it was out. I got out of the car and was using the porta potty, and I got out and I'm still hobbling, and the guy that was the owner of Panther Racing comes around the corner on his golf cart. He's like, hey, what are you doing Tuesday night? I'm like, I don't know, getting off of work probably. And he goes, I want you to fly down to Houston with me, and if those guys, if the people at Pennzoil like you, I'd like to give you the job driving my car next year. And I said, really? I said, what do I need to wear? And he goes, you need a suit. I'm like, well, I don't own a suit. So Monday, I drove home Sunday night. Monday afternoon, I drove down to Indianapolis and went to Nordstrom and got a suit. Tuesday, I got on the plane, went down there. We had a great meeting. I got the job, went out and won my first 2 races for them. We won 2 championships together, and that was the springboard to get to. So it's all these little fingers, and we talked about it to a lot of people. Everybody thinks that life is about getting to a bigger town where everybody doesn't know your small business or small town stuff, but there's no such thing as a big town. Every town, every person has all these little things about how certain people helped you propel you to where you wanted to be at, and it's all those relationships that really are what propels society in general. And most of the people that think that they're really big time end up really alone because they forgot all the people that helped them get where they're at.
That's very poignant. One last question, a quick one, because I made this promise to Sam. So go ahead.
Thank you, Sam. Sitting up there has been very inspirational for me listening to you. Your spiritual path, I just wondered about a racing path as regards to the infamous Indy split. Did that help your career, hurt it? Picking sides, IRL versus kart? Just curious.
Yeah, so for those of you that don't know, in 95, so the Indianapolis Motor Speedway was always its own entity, and it ran in the IndyCar Series schedule, kart at the time, but it was its own deal. And the kart owners were kind of always upset because they felt like the people that owned the Indianapolis Motor Speedway made too much money for the portion. They're only one race. Well, they are the race. So yes, they should make some money. So in 1995, there was a split where the kart owners decided that they were going to do their own thing, and the people that owned the Indianapolis Motor Speedway decided that they were going to start this thing called the Indy Racing League. I can guarantee you 100% that if that split didn't happen, that I would not be sitting here. So by the time that I made it to IndyCars, the unification or reunification was starting to happen, and a lot of the teams like Team Penske, Ganassi, Andretti were going to come back over and do that. Now it's one series, but without that door being open, I don't think that I would have gotten the opportunity, because in the early 90s, the IndyCar Series kart at the time was starting to rival Formula One. Like, there was some questions on whether or not it would at one point in time rival Formula One. Now, the split basically kept that from happening, but it gave guys like me an opportunity that I would have never had, and really a lot of young American drivers have gotten that opportunity. You look at guys that are successful right now. Joseph Newgarden has won the last 2 Indianapolis 500s and has won a championship for Roger. But he started up through the ranks in 2007-8, when the series were still split. So another guy that probably wouldn't have got the opportunity. So I think it opened eyes to American talent for sure, and it was phenomenal. It's exactly what needed to happen, and it's another thing that I couldn't have worked out and couldn't have overcame, but it has really made me who I am and gave me opportunities that I wouldn't have had elsewise.
Sam, thank you so very much. Let's show our appreciation.
Thank you.
While Ken's walking up here, I also want to say, I think we should have him back sometime to talk a little more, but our heartfelt thanks for all the good you and Crystal have done in Northwest Ohio for so many good causes.
Well, again, that follows leadership. So, my parents decided that they, were blessed beyond what they could imagine. They've always wanted to be able to give back and to do their best to give back. And, that it's, again, no person is an island. A lot of people helped to make me. So whether it was people that were selling phones or people that worked for my parents, other people in the community, even to the encouragement, that you get. And it's amazing how many stories that I could come up with of how things like, you always have kind of a good and a bad. So when you focus on the good things and the good that you can do, the most, I'll try to make it as quick as I can, but after I won the Indianapolis 500 and the championship in 2006, our local newspaper, the Crescent News, put up a book, a Sam Hornish book, and it was a picture book of my career from when I started to win an Indy. And in 2007, I had the opportunity to do a autism awareness autograph. So the Crescent News donated the books. I donated my time, and people came out and they bought a book for $50, and it was a donation for autism. The night after that, I was out with a bunch of my friends, and I had this lady come in, and she's intoxicated, but very, very loud about, it's Sam Hornish, oh my gosh, it's Sam Hornish. I go, who? And the guy that she was with was very upset with me for going, who? And he starts yelling at me, cure autism now, because we'd done the autism thing the night before. And I'm like, this is, it was always a weird thing for me if I was out in public, because, and to be real honest, if alcohol was involved, regardless of if I had the alcohol, because it was either I was too nice to the wife, girlfriend, or whatever, or I was not nice enough, So he's yelling at me, and we're having this thing, and so anytime I saw that book for a long time, I would remember that interaction, and it was not necessarily a good thing. Or if somebody would bring up autism, I would think about that. Fast forward, about 12 years after that, the Buckeyes were playing for the national championship. I went with my brother-in-law to a little place called Dale's in Maumee, and it's a Buckeye bar. And this guy comes up to me and he's like, hey, you remember when you did that book signing for autism awareness? I'm like, oh my gosh, like you're I knew it wasn't that guy, but I said, yeah. He goes, my brother was out of town when you were doing that, but he was a huge fan of yours. So I went over, stood in line, and I got him the book so that I could give it to him for his birthday. He died on his way back from that trip that he was on. He goes, so that book went on my bookshelf. He goes, every time I walk past that book, I think about my brother and how much I love him, and that I do miss him, but it is a reminder for me of him. And I was like, okay, there's the flip side. Like, it's still not a great, a great happy ending story, but like, a lot of the things that we come across in life, we have the opportunity of whether we look at the negative aspect or if we have the opportunity to look at what's the positive that can come out of this. What can I take that makes me get through the next day, and who knows what all the other things have done, but just I've had the opportunity to be surrounded by a lot of good people, and while I've got the opportunity to go and sign the books or whatever, there's always people that work the events. There's always people that come up with the thought process and make those things happen. So even though I've got the opportunity to donate my time, we're to give of our time, talents, and our treasure. A lot of people think that I should do one of those three things, but Jesus doesn't ever give us an either or, but a both and. So you're supposed to do all of those things. So while I get the opportunity and the glory a lot of times because I did it, there was a whole bunch of people behind the scenes that had to make that happen. So I found that the best way for me to have joy in life is to not care who gets the glory for it.
Dr. Lotta, we have a little something. Of course, we couldn't let you come here and not leave with a little Dietz's chocolates.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate your presentation today. I had mentioned a little earlier that we do have a special speaker coming, Mark Brown, who will be coming to campus next weekend. He's the Emmy Award-winning author of the Arthur book series and the PBS children's show. He will be officially our undergraduate commencement speaker this year. He will also be giving an evening presentation very similar to what you are enjoying right now. So if you are available next Saturday evening, he will be here, and he'll be doing a little book signing as well. So if you want another interesting presentation, then I think that you should make your way back here for next Saturday evening. So, very good, and I think that is all. Thank you for coming, and keep your eyes open for our next Fridays at Findlay lecture that'll be coming up probably this fall. Thank you so much.